Watching this, I'm glad you're here. I haven't done a lot of live streams on the My Stepdad YouTube channel other than Rocket League, but I wanted to get on tonight and address some specific challenges that young men have that are growing up without a dad. That's why I have this YouTube channel. I know a lot of folks are on this or watch the videos to figure out how to do things, and that's fantastic. But the real reason I'm doing it is because I I grew up without my dad, and I know the challenges that that causes. And having been a young man growing up, I know the unique challenges that apply to young men. And I'm really concerned that there's a lot of young men, a lot of kids today growing up without a dad in their lives. And for those of you young men, if you're like me, then you've got some real challenges. And I think you've got more challenges today than I had when I was growing up, just because of the changes in society that weren't there when I was growing up. So I'm going to share my screen, and I want to just go over some of the challenges, and not just the challenges, but some of the things that you can do about them. So, I'm James Stevenson. Stepdad is my brand, and I have the YouTube channel to help show you things that you may not know how to do if you don't have a dad in your life, and a lot of things you can figure out other ways too. But if I were to ask you the question, what is so hard about growing up without a dad? What's so hard about not having a dad? There's there are some challenges. I kind of put them in two categories, but I want to take just a minute and hear it and ask because this is the family that I grew up in. This is my mom and me and my four siblings. I'd ask you if you can tell which one is me, and I know the picture on the screen is small now, but I'll give you a hint. I'm not the one wearing the pink dress. So that one was not me. That was my sister. I'm the little guy sitting on my mom's lap. And I want to just take a minute for those of you, because I know there's a lot of single moms and a lot of single ladies that watch the videos that message me about different videos that I've made and posted on YouTube. And I just want to take a minute and honor you single moms and recognize you. I know as I grew up watching my mom, many tear-filled nights, many sleepless nights, doing all she could to raise five kids by herself and give us the best opportunity for success in life that she could. And she did a fantastic job, but I saw how hard that was for her. And I knew the challenges that we faced as a family. So for those of you that are going through that as single moms, I don't give up. I know it's hard. Your kids are going to be grateful once they get to adulthood and appreciate all the sacrifices that you made. So do your best and don't give up. I know it's a real struggle. My wife and I raised five kids by ourselves, by ourselves together. And there were times that it felt like I don't know how the two of us are going to do it. And that gave me all kinds of appreciation for what my mom went through. So I know it's tough. So hang in there. All right. Well, let me come back to the question I posted here. What's so hard about not having a dad? And particularly for you young men, any of you that are growing up without a dad. I kind of put the challenges in two categories. There are some practical challenges. These are the things I make most of the videos that I post on the Stepdad YouTube channel. It's things like home repairs or auto repairs or how to shave for guys, different things about sports, which I haven't done so much about. But, how do you learn about sports and sporting activities unless your mom's avid in those things? And she may be. I remember the kid across the street from me when I was growing up. Yeah, they had a dad. Unfortunately, he was abusive. But he certainly wasn't helpful in terms of teaching his son sports. So we're this little kid, neighborhood kid group that goes over to play baseball, softball. It wasn't even t-ball, but he gets up to bat and he doesn't know how to bat, and he's holding the bat right in front of him, standing like the ball would have to, he'd have to hit the ball or it would hit him. It wasn't going to go past him, it was going to hit him because no one had showed him how to play baseball before or softball or whatever. So I call those practical challenges, and they're real, but they're kind of the surface level. Man, I wish I had a dad so that I could learn how to, I could ask him about how to balance my checkbook or what do you do in this situation. And there's no doubt that would be helpful. Having grown up without a dad, I can tell you that the biggest challenges are not the practical ones. They are the emotional ones. And it's things like this, dealing with self-doubt, recovering from social mess ups. What do you do when you have a faux pas? You get on YouTube and you're doing a live stream and you say something stupid. What do you do? I don't imagine your dad has the answer to that one, but there's questions I didn't feel comfortable asking my mom about. For example, um, when you get to adolescence and things, the birds and the bees, that was an awkward situation. And mom did her best with me. Had some books she took out that had little diagrams and till the point got to the point where I realized now this is a little awkward to talk to mom about, so I'll just ask my friends. Or a different case. I was in the eighth grade, I remember, and I had there were two guys that started. I don't know why, but they started threatening me. So and I knew them beforehand, and I didn't have bad relationships with them, but for whatever reason, they started under their voices. They say we're going to beat you up after school, and I believed them. And these were the tough kids, and I wasn't. I was the scrawny kid. They used to tell me I had to run around in the shower to get wet. So I I I literally lived in fear every day at school, thinking that I was going to get beat up after school or on my way home, or they were going to meet me and beat me up. And I would get home and I would go, I made it. And about a half an hour later, I would start getting uptight and worrying about tomorrow. Are they going to get me tomorrow? Are they going to beat me up tomorrow? Now, this is an example because I didn't feel comfortable talking to mom about that. Mom might have done fantastic with, but in my teenage mind, my only thought was that if I tell mom about it, what's she going to do? She's going to go to the principal and talk to the principal, and the principal will talk to the kids, and they'll get in trouble, and I'll be branded as a mama's boy, and I'll be a social outcast. And it didn't appear to me to be a feasible option for me to deal with that bullying situation that I was going through. So, I don't know if it would have been different had I had a dad there, but I would have felt more comfortable talking to him about it and sharing with him what I was going through. Regardless, the logic of a teenager is not the same as an adult. The logic of a child is not the same as a teenager. It's a challenge to go through life and to be raised without a dad, particularly for a young man, because there are things you just don't know how to relate to as you're growing up. At least that was my experience. The biggest challenge I think you face is the self-doubts about your own worth, learning to love yourself. I've got as the last bullet here, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. I was lucky though, because I had a guy come into my life, and his name was Mark Gould. I know I've mentioned him on some of the videos I've done in the past. Mark was a guy in our neighborhood. When I turned 12, I entered a youth group, and he was one of the leaders, not the only one. But for whatever reason, he kind of took me under his wing. And I'm trying to pop up a window here to just see. Okay, good. I want to make sure if there's comments, I can see them. So I'm going to hook that over there. And hey there, Ostef, I'm glad you're watching this. But so Mark became kind of a surrogate dad for me. And throughout my teenage years, actually, even after I got married and into adulthood, I would still do things with him and his family, his wife, his kids were all grown by then. But Mark took me under his wing, and he would help me with things like when our family car needed new brakes. He came over to the house and helped walk me through the process, helped me change the brakes on mom's car. Um, he did other things that I'd go camping with him and his family, and he'd take motorcycles. I learned how to ride motorcycles with Mark because he had some, and I'd go with him and I'd ride on the back, and then eventually I'd ride in the front, and then eventually he'd say, "Go ahead and try it," and so I did. So I was very, very fortunate to have Mark come into my life and be that surrogate dad for me and a positive role model too. One of the things that Mark did most for me, well, it's typified in this story. So let me tell you this little story. I had a good friend. He was a big fan of the rock group Kiss. So Kiss was coming to town, um, and there was no way that he was not going to be at this concert, my friend, right? His name was David. So David's, I'd go to his house and he had every album and he'd play them and listen. Sometimes I'd sit there and I didn't have anything else to do, but it wasn't that exciting for me. But in any event, He was going to go to this concert, the rock concert when Kiss came to town. And so, it's like, well, man, if I have money, maybe I'll get a ticket and I'll go with him. What the heck? Well, I mentioned this to Mark. I was talking to him. I said, yeah, the Kiss is coming to town. I think I might go with my friend. Well, Mark looked at me and he said, Jimmy, if you go to that concert, I am going to come down there. I'm going to walk inside, find you. I'm going to drag you out of there and I'm going to kick your butt all the way home. You can guess that Mark was not a fan of the rock group Kiss, so he didn't think it was a good thing for me to go. Well, I told my friend about this, and his name was David again. So I told David what Mark had told me, and he said, "Man, I would be so mad if he said something like that to me. I'd hate the guy." I didn't say anything to David, but I had the exact opposite reaction. I felt good inside because Mark cared about me enough that he didn't want me doing something that he knew would not be good for me, at least that he felt would not be good for me. And so I didn't say anything to my friend, but I had a good feeling inside because that's what Mark did for me more than anything else. Mark loved me. He cared about me genuinely. Well, I've told about Mark since I've started the My Stepdad nonprofit and the YouTube channel and my other efforts. And I've mentioned how Mark was the surrogate dad for me. And people have asked me, well, did Mark have a certain set of things that he taught you as you were growing up? And I thought about it and I said, well, not really. No. And then I asked myself, well, what do I think a young man growing up without a dad needs most of all today? And those are the things that I wrote about in the Map to Manhood, the book that came out last year. Um, Here's a copy of it. But in that, I thought, well, what are the things that a young man would need to know? And is most at risk of not getting because he may not have an engaged dad in his life helping him as he grows into adulthood. Well, if you're like me, then where do you go for help? You may not have a Mark Gould in your life, and Mark wasn't the only guy that I had friends, dads, and they were good examples, and and I observed them. I just didn't have a dad in the home. Dad wasn't there. I'd see him once or a week or 2 weeks out of the year. He lived a couple states away. We'd go spend a couple weeks during the summer with him and his wife, and then we come home. And so he wasn't there for most of my childhood. So where do you go if that's the boat that you're in? If you don't have a Mark Gould or a family member or someone that can give you good advice, good help because they genuinely care about you and they have good advice and good help to give, these are the things that I think are most important. These are the things I think you're most at risk of not getting if you don't have it. You can get this graphic, the Map to Manhood graphic. If you haven't gotten it, downloaded it before, go to maptomanhood.org. Maptomanhood.org. You can download the graphic. There's 4 different paths on what I call the Map to Manhood, and this is what I wrote about in the book. The first path is the self-discipline path. We can maybe wear out our moms and have them give in. I did that many times when I was growing up, begged, cried, wore through her patience level, and I got what I wanted. Well, sometimes dads are a little less uh, wear outable. I mean, sometimes they're more of the enforcers of the disciplinarians in homes. Not always, but often. So if you don't have a dad there, then you're probably at higher risk of not having learned habits of self-discipline. That's not going to serve you well in adulthood. You've got to be able to discipline yourself to do what needs to be done when it ought to be done, whether you want to or not. And if you don't learn that, you're going to be at risk of floundering in life. So self-discipline is the first path. And there's on each of these paths, I've got 4 milestones, and there's actions under each milestone. Now, I'm telling you about this because next week I'm going to have a free 5-day challenge, and we're going to work through one of these actions on each of these paths in Stepdad's challenge. In this challenge, it's a free challenge next week. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But the first path then is self-discipline, learning to discipline yourself, learn to love what you don't like. That's how I like to characterize it because you really can. And it's good and it's better for you if you do. Well, the second path is this one, the social skills, it's relationships, it's learning how to relate to other people. If you don't learn that, in childhood, you're going to struggle through the rest of your life. Now, if you haven't learned how to be good socially, it doesn't mean you can't. You absolutely can. And that's why this second path is here, the social skills. And there's different milestones, learning how to be a good friend, learning how to relate with your family, with other adults, and with the opposite sex in the case of dating, and learning how to have relationships that could lead to more intimate relationships, we'll say. So that's the second path. All right, the third one is the most important one. And this is probably the biggest risk that you've got if you grew up and you didn't have a dad in your life. And this is, well, I'll tell you why, at least for me. As a kid, you don't think as an adult, right? So when I was a kid and I thought, well, dad's not here, our family's different than everybody else's, which it's not less different today because a lot of families are not traditional with mom and dad in the home anymore. And I get that. But back then it was a little more unique. Um, so as a kid, I'm thinking, well, why isn't dad here? I've got disadvantages because dad's not here. I had older brothers, so they kind of taught me some of those things. But the real question was, is there something wrong with me that my dad doesn't want to be with me? And, it doesn't make sense to an adult, but to a kid, that's a natural question. And you plant that seed in your mind and it sticks with you. And you think, well, something must be wrong with me or my dad would be with me because he'd love me. It's hard to segregate or to assign the ability for your dad to be making mistakes or to have made choices that have separated you two, other than it being you having some part of the blame in that. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm trying to say. As a teenager, as an older teenager, as an adult, I understood. Yeah, okay. Mom and dad had marital problems. They divorced, and that's why dad didn't leave me. He left mom, um, or they split up or whatever. And I understand that logically, but guess what? Those feelings and those emotions don't ever leave you, particularly if they come in as when you're a child. It gets buried in your subconscious and it's there. And trust me, I know that because it wasn't until the last 10 years of my life that I actually had to deal with those or learned how to deal with those so that I could free myself from those self-doubts, those feelings of lack of self-worth because of that lack of a relationship with my dad when I was growing up. In my opinion, that is the biggest risk that you have if you've grown up without a dad, without a loving, involved dad in your life. So this third path is arguably the most important path. And there's 4 milestones on here. I had to throw this video in just because one of the ways that you can start to exercise that emotion of love in your life is through pets. And I know I've had my cat Felix. Oh, I hope the sound goes through on this video. Let's see. Well, anyway, now if you're a dog lover, then just forgive me that, we have cats here. I like dogs too. Felix was sitting here sleeping next to me for the last 2 hours at the desk here. One of the things you can do to start developing your capacity to exercise and feel and be comfortable with loving others is through loving pets. And that's the first milestone on the love path of the map to manhood. That's not the one we're going to do in the challenge, but I'll tell you more about that in a little bit here. So the fourth path in the Journey to Manhood or in the Map to Manhood book is the purpose path. If you can discover what your purpose is and live for it, you will have so much more fulfillment, more direction in your life than if you're just trying to avoid things you don't want to do. That's why this one is also very important. This is not the most important one, but it is very important, and it will change you in positive ways once you can define what is my purpose in life. And it doesn't have to be when I'm 92, I want to accomplish this. What's your purpose for the next 3 months or 3 years or 5 years, or where do you want to be in 5 years from now? Okay, let me do some exercises to find out what that would be and start working to that. And it will change your life in positive ways. So the purpose path is the fourth one and the last one. So we come back to this graphic here. So that's the overall graphic. It shows the milestones, it shows the actions. Again, you can download this graphic for free at maptomanhood.org. Just go there and you can download the PDF and it'll show it to you. But that's what I wrote about in the book, The Map to Manhood. Now, next week, this is why I'm doing the live broadcast right now. Next week, I'm going to be doing a 5-day challenge. So for 5 days, I'm going to go live online and we're going to look at one of these paths, each path. In fact, let me show you what it looks like. So here's, you can register for it at mystepdad.org/challenge. And I invite you to go there. You will see that landing page here. That's the web address. But each day next week, we're going to go over one of those things. So why would you want to participate? Day one, we're going to look at self-discipline. You can't do all of the actions in 24 hours. And I know that. But I've picked one from each of these paths that is doable in 24 hours, but that will also help you start to work through the processes of, in this case, gaining some self-discipline that you may not have. Day two, we're going to look at social skills. And I've got one of the actions that's in the book that I'm going to assign you. And that's why this is a challenge. It's not just to come and watch and listen. The challenge is for you to do the actions that are associated with it. Again, it's free to do. So just go to mystepdad.org/challenge and you can register for it. You'll get the information on how to join at that point. So day two is social skills. And one of the actions, and we'll talk about it, we'll give you the assignment. And then for those that want to, we can do some Q&A after. Day three is learning to love. And that again is the most important path in my opinion. It doesn't sound maybe like something that that would entice you, but if you want to have deep positive relationships in your future, then you need to learn how to love. And and that's something you might be disadvantaged with if you've grown up and your dad hasn't been there to show you how to do that as a man, particularly. So, day four, we're going to look at the power of purpose. We're going to look at discovering what your purpose is. And there's a good exercise that we've got for that one as well. And then finally, on day five, we're going to bring it all together. So, the four paths, each of those for the first 4 days, but the fifth day is really bringing it together in terms of you don't have to go through life bearing the burdens or carrying the baggage that comes from having grown up without a dad. Most of that's going to be emotional. A lot of it is practical, but you can fix the practical really fast if you can deal with the emotional. So day five is really talking about what you can do to have some of those father son or father child experiences that you may not have had as a kid, but as an adult, if that makes sense. So how to be the adult, how to be the man that you want to be. All right, this again is the where you can go to register for it. Again, I hope you'll do that. Go to mystepdad.org/challenge. You can register for it. You'll get the information on how to join the live streams that will happen next week. So this is these are some of the graphics I put together because that's really the point, and that's really the goal that I hope with these efforts through the My Stepdad YouTube channel and other things that I'm doing to help those of you that have grown up without a dad, not only learn the practical skills that you may not have, but to feel the love of a dad in your life and learn how to give that love as an adult man or as an adult to those around you, hopefully your future family. So this is what this is the details. It'll be at 5 o'clock Eastern next week, each day, Monday through Friday. It'll be much like this. I think I've kind of shared this stuff with you. So let me just end this with this thought. You don't have to go throughout your life without the happy, fond family memories that you may not have had while you were growing up. You can still have those experiences as an adult with your own family, but it's not going to be easy, but it is very, very possible. So if that's something that you want, if that's something that you feel like would be worth working for, then make sure you sign up for that 5-day challenge, free to join, but you're going to start that process on each of the days next week, and you're going to have a little bit more help getting there. When I make videos and I post them on the YouTube channel, I end every one of them with these things, or most of them with these things. You can still succeed, even though your dad may not be in your daily life. And you do have a dad that loves you. I hope you feel that. If this resonates with you, then make sure you join the 5-day challenge. Either way, I hope to see you either in the challenge next week or I will see you on the next video. And until then, let's see, stop share. Always remember that you can really succeed, even if your dad's not in your daily life. And you do have a dad that loves you.